Hey everyone, Chris here. I am recording this lecture at around 9:30 at night on Monday, February 9th. Apologies for getting this out to you later than normal. I'm coming to you from this god-awful lighting in this living room here. Wanted to talk to you today about intervening in organizations, and part of that is kind of a little vulnerable, and I wanted to make sure I was doing this justice. So I appreciate your patience with me. I've got some information here for you. My cat is here too. I'm going to show her to y'all in a minute. So yeah, let's get started. Welcome to week 4, intervening in organizations. For our check-in today, my cat here was being so adorable, I figured we could do furry companions. I'm gonna lift it over here. Do you see my cat? Yes, you do. Hi, Nishbite. How you doing? Can you say hello? Can you say hello to the classmates? Hmm? Can you say hello to the students? I don't know why I have a weird accent, but yeah, this is Neshma. And um, I think some of you might be aware that having a pet, um, something whose little life kind of depends on you, can actually help decrease anxiety and depression, like symptoms. It's actually been proven that cats in particular, um, when they purr, like especially if they're on your body somewhere, it can be very comforting. So I wanted to introduce y'all to Neshima. And yeah, she's my little emotional support animal. Um, I hope you all have a furry companion, and if not, a furry loved one. Uh, when I was working in like in hospice, I would often joke, do you have like any pets in the home? Grandchildren count. So yeah. Anyway, we've got some stuff to get through, and I want to be cognizant again just of the world. So yeah, here we go. So general reminders, you've got your weekly readings and resources, activities and minute paper. The second optional synchronous Zoom assignment review. So that'll be for the organizational assessment. That is going to be tomorrow. So Tuesday, February 10th at 5:30 p.m. your time, 7:30 p.m. my time. So I'll be hopping on. Don't worry, I will record that. Hello, yes, hello. And upload that. I'm putting together a template for y'all. And the quiz is actually, I'm sorry, I said this last time, that the quiz was due today on the 9th, but I'm pushing the quiz back to the 16th because I wanted to make sure to do the review to make sure y'all had a chance to take a look at that and ask any questions you might have and think about it before answering the questions in the quiz. So the organization assessment assignment is actually due towards the end of this month. There's some wiggle room on that, so let me know if you end up needing more time, less time. It honestly shouldn't be too bad. At least I'm hoping. I don't even know that it's going to be a 6 to 8 page paper. That's kind of what they, estimated. I feel like that's a bit much, but also there's going to be a lot of headers. So, like I said, I'm putting together a template for y'all. I'll go over it tomorrow in the optional synchronous Zoom. Yeah, bring your questions. This type of assignment has been taught before. It's just that this is the first time it's being taught in this iteration. So there's some wiggle room on the due dates and kind of also some of the structure of it. So if there's anything that doesn't make sense or that you need clarification on, let me know. But yeah, here we go. So, week 4, we're gonna follow up a little bit on the Gen AI discussion. I want to keep this kind of going a little bit because I feel like I was really good about getting the conversation out there, but not following up. It seems, sorry, I've got a cat hair in my mouth. Well, there we go. So it seems like some of the like I don't know, we've got thirds of the class, right? A third is like, woo, let's do this. A third is like, meh, I use it sometimes, like just for personal stuff or what have you. Other folks are like, heck no, I do not use this technology. No way, no how. Um, I just want to give us some food for thought and also maybe engage y'all in a little bit of an exercise about like what the benefits and the, shortcomings might be, and how we just might want to utilize it in this class. And I've got a couple of thoughts on that last bit. I'm going to talk you through the SWOT analysis. And then I also, since this is our week talking about intervening in an organization, I had some personal experience with wanting to form a union or at least understand what it was when I was working at one of my workplaces. So I'm going to ramble at y'all a little bit about that. Not so much to be like pros and cons or to say one way or the other. But I do think it's important for y'all to have resources, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But I was kind of starting from square zero when I was trying to figure out how to even go about doing it. And I just wanted y'all to have at least some starting points that I found when it was a bit too late for me in the organization I worked in and the work I was passionate in. So let's get started. I mean, I guess we've been started, but you know what I mean. So, following up on the Gen AI discussion, I'm hoping that y'all can help me fill in some benefits and drawbacks. Um, yeah, how would you like to get this information to me? I totally hear y'all that the team's situation was not great. So I'm thinking about maybe trying to let y'all like edit this particular slide to help me figure out some of the benefits and drawbacks. Something I will say that I've noticed uh for all the benefits that this type of software might have, some of the drawbacks that I've just having been in this in the working world for a while now, is that it seems like no matter what automation or what new gadget or gizmo or software or hardware we get, it just ends up like it's not like we get that time back, it always ends up being like, oh, now you have more time to do this. So I just want to be aware of that. And I also, um, I think it's an interesting and unique opportunity to kind of engage in discussion about this stuff. It's very much like social media. If y'all had me in class last semester, I had mentioned that. We did kind of an ethics discussion around that. Um, for how scary this technology can be. Um, I was listening to this podcast recently that basically just asked the question, what if it goes right? Like what's possible if it all happens and unfolds in the best possible way? What are the possibilities there then? Um, so just want to kind of, I don't know, throw it out there as food for thought. Excited to hear what y'all think. The things that I want to bring, I would also like y'all to kind of help me with this too. But what I would hope for in this class is that we use generative AI transparently and honestly. Um, I think we're in kind of a Wild West situation where there aren't really a lot of, best practices or, uh, the software that we have to identify whether or not something is AI is, also kind of not perfect. So since there's no way to really screen for that kind of thing. And even if there was, I don't know that it would be fair or, you know, honest in a way. Um, what I would hope is that we're just kind of being transparent and honest about how we're using it. And maybe if you want to use this class as like a space to play with that and to see where your comfort level is and where your kind of ethical boundary is. It's cool if you are heck no, no way, no thank you. I tend to not use generative AI a lot, just maybe because I'm a bit of a control freak in that regard. Um, I would also offer up that the generative AI piece is one of the concerns around it is that by just dropping in the questions or the essay prompts and the literature and all of that, that it's doing the critical thinking for you. That's why a lot of our questions in class and across your classes and time during this program are going to be reflective is because we want to hear your voice. We want to understand how this has impacted you, how your thinking has changed or evolved because of the information. And Nesh wants to add to that. Thank you, Nesh. Yes. Good point. Oh, very good points. Yes. Um, I also want you to, if you are using Gen AI, to consider it as like an assistant, not a replacement or not like a substitute for you, because your brain and your experiences are something that generative AI can never replicate. Um, Not in the way that we need you to do that work in this program. Um, I'm not here to shame anybody or to say don't use it or to say, you know, you should or you shouldn't. I'm just curious about this and how you all want to approach using it in this class, if at all. And so thank you for engaging in that conversation and for continuing to engage. So yeah, what else do we want to add to this list essentially? Okay, hopping into the SWOT analysis. So this is kind of a review from your readings this week, one of them at least. The SWOT analysis and using it in social work agencies or just within the context. I mean, you don't have to use it in a social work agency. You can use it pretty much anywhere. You could use it in relationships, like your personal relationship and your family. It's just a way of approaching problem solving. So, what is a SWOT analysis? It guides you to identify pluses and minuses within an organization. So, I don't like saying positives and negatives. That just feels judgmental or like it's laden with meaning. Um, we're talking strengths and weaknesses. We're talking about, internally, what do we see as going well and what do we see as places that we might be able to improve some stuff or where there might be some stuff lacking. Um, and then this is again internal to the organization. So the next part of the SWOT analysis are opportunities and threats. And these are basically external forces outside of an organization. So you're talking about like environmental or, things that we don't necessarily have control over. Like if we're thinking about this, like the the pluses and minuses, the strengths and weaknesses are internal. Um, if we go out, one step in that like ecosystem, or even further than that, it's things that we might be able to influence, like our community, our environment, but ultimately won't likely be able to control or might need to negotiate or account for. Why would you use the SWOT analysis? To develop better or full awareness of a situation? Kind of like if you think about like person and environment, but like for organizations, we take the context. The piece that we're discussing is part of a whole. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Um, I mean, even if you're doing testing in a vacuum, like for science reasons, it's got a whole atmosphere around it, like of people doing stuff and needing to tweak things and work on things. So even the stuff that happens in a vacuum is not really happening in a vacuum, if you get me. It can help with strategic planning. So by doing a SWOT analysis, it can help identify issues or problems you intend to change, or it can help you set or reaffirm goals. Um, and it can inform decision making. So a SWOT analysis could help potentially create an action plan. When do we use SWOT? When we want to explore possibilities, inform decisions for initiatives, identify where change is possible, maybe even probable or most likely to occur. We might be looking at far down the road, right? As far as where we want an organization or a directive or, um, you know, what have you, a mission to go. But if you're having trouble identifying some of the stepping stones there or like some of the way of getting to that, a SWOT might be helpful to kind of assess where things are at and what's possible. Um, you can also use SWOT to check in and adjust or refine plans during implementation. So, we talk about if you're talking about the general interventionist model, right, you've got the point where you know, implement and then assess. So this would be like one of the things you could do to assess in order to pivot, to reorient to the mission or update to be able to change to what needs to be focused on. We want to be dynamic in that way and flexible in that way to respond to any changes that might come up. So, for example, um, if we are in a community that is impacted by a natural disaster and we're working with, the unhoused population, we might be pivoting from, you know, uh, healthcare or, um, if there's a particular need for mental health support or resource support, we might be pivoting to those directly impacted by the natural disaster and who have been most impacted um, to make sure that they are safe, have, what they need. Um, that would be like a shift, but still within, mission parameters, if that makes sense. So, what is a SWOT? Internally, you've got your strengths and weaknesses. So, some things to consider human resources. We're talking people power. We're talking who's your staff, who are your volunteers, your board members, populations served. So, this would be, those first two boxes. You're thinking about like, do we have a full staff? Do we have, volunteers that have been with us for a while who all know what's going on and know the community, who are passionate about our purpose? Is there a board involved? How are the board members? What about the populations served or population served? You can have pluses and minuses for both strengths and weaknesses for all of these points, and sometimes your strength is also your weakness, right? Um, Physical resources are like the tangibles, like we're talking about location, like your building, equipment, the hardware and the software kind of thing. Um, Financial, we're talking grants, funding agencies, or other income activities and processes. So the programs that you have running, the systems employed. So these are the things that the people power are utilizing the physical resources and the funding to achieve, right? If you are the, owner of a new modality or system to address a particular need in a community, um, owning that program would be an example of something that you like uh, have as far as a strength, Um, I also, like, for example, for a weakness with activities and processes, this might also kind of fall under physical resources, but I worked at PNC Bank for a couple of years, maybe about 10 years ago now, and they were still running some of their systems on DOS, which is insane to me. This was like 2015, 2016 that they were running on DOS. Uh, so yeah, that would be a weakness. And past experiences. So reputation in the community, what the organization has already experienced and learned from. Um, yeah, uh, just everything that has gotten you to this moment. It's important to acknowledge the growing pains and also the successes as well. And I apologize, my contacts are really dry right now all of a sudden. And of course, I'm staring at this bright screen and this terrible light, and it's just making me blink a lot. So opportunities and threats. So these are the external, um, pluses and minuses. Uh, Trends in the field or in the culture. So, for example, if you're thinking about mental health, right? Mental health had been considered like niche for a while, and also that you had to have like a particular set of, um, oh gosh, like symptoms or specific level of need in order to receive care and have it not be considered stigmatized. It likely was still very stigmatized, but that doesn't, um, it's more widely accepted now, is what I'm trying to say. that folks seek out mental health. Uh, having a therapist is kind of normal now, but it didn't used to be. Even like 10, 20 years ago, especially within certain populations. And it's still not very common in certain populations. There's still stigma held with it for some folks. Things that we can't control, the economy, your local economy. So if you have, sorry, ooh, like I live in Pawtucket, Rhode Island right now. And one of the big news stories is that Hasbro Children's, like the toy company, the headquarters are based in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, but now they're going to be moving to, I believe, Boston. So there's an entire community here that works at Hasbro Children's that is now going to have to either commute to Boston, which is a nightmare, let me tell you, um, or they're going to have to move. They might have to find different jobs, which might take them out of the community or reduce their income. It just ends up having a pretty detrimental and big impact on the community. You're also talking national, so kind of inflation right now that's happening and has been happening in the States. And international, our markets impact each other. Things you can't necessarily control are funding sources. So we saw a surge of different funding resources during COVID. Um, people got additional money from the government. There was the small business loans that you could take out, the SBA, I think they were called, or something like that. Um, those were all be in response to COVID-19. Foundations, their money might, kind of fall through, or they might close. They might change leadership and therefore like change their own goals. Um, Donors might change or pass on or move. They might also find a new cause that they're particularly dedicated to. And, legislation obviously can change funding sources as well. We saw a lot of that too recently with the NEA grants, National Endowment for the Arts. Uh, a lot of the NEA funding got pulled, or at least put on hold kind of indefinitely, for different programming that was meant to support uh, Black and Brown folks, transgender and LGBTQ plus folks. Um, just a lot of communities were impacted by the NEA and it being controlled now by this current government. Demographics like gentrification, you know, if you're looking at Denver, right? Changes in the physical environment around you, like, or the people rather of those in your area, the people that you serve. So again, we can take a very like laser focused microscopic look at this moment in time, but if you kind of pull back and look at that macro perspective, it's like over time, how has the population of this community changed and what needs have arisen and fallen away and been because they've been met or because people were displaced or ended up moving, that kind of thing. So the demographics of your population or your community likely will change over time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something you want to be aware of. The physical environment. So what's happening in the community where you're located? We're thinking about, again, some of the tangibles, like how do people get to your location? Transportation, bus routes. What in the local external environment is impacting your ability to do what you set out to do with your mission for your organization? Is there construction? Uh, you know, things you might not necessarily think about, but that all of a sudden are like, oh crap, you know, um, legislation, do new federal requirements or state requirements make it easier to do what you do, or do they make it harder? What do you need to do or change or implement or start documenting in a new way in order to, legally operate? and local, national, or international events. We've had several in the past couple decades or so. Um, Major events can sway public opinion, but also what ends up being on the public's mind. And so, if you have a cause that is involved in some way or is impacted by a large, or, you know, like a tragedy, for example, um, you might be able to, it says, it feels crappy to say this, but to kind of leverage that, for greater funding or greater resources, to get more volunteers, um, than if you're not getting news coverage, for example. I was going to give you some examples here. Um, as far as like the group practice, like that I'm in, I think I'm going to skip past this right now because I don't think I have the bandwidth right now to kind of go through. I was going to try to break this down per thing, but I might save that for later if y'all want me to do this. Just again, because I don't have the bandwidth right now. But how do you do a SWOT? Who develops it? When and where do you develop this kind of analysis? How do you develop this kind of analysis? Um, these are the steps. They're a bit redundant. Again, this was I snagged this from the PowerPoint from the reading. Um, I mean, it's basically group work, You divide and conquer if you're a large group. Oh, sorry, that phrasing is terrible. I just realized that. Um, but yeah, you divvy everybody up so that they can have that kind of more personal conversation about it, and then you have them bring that to the group. Or if you're a smaller group, you can just do it all there. And um, you always want to make sure that you have a written summary that you then share with the participants so that everybody can agree with it. Something like meeting minutes would be an example. Um, yeah, you want everybody's voice to feel heard, and you want everybody to um, feel like they've had an opportunity to share what their observations are. So we're going to have you do a SWOT activity this week. You're going to use the SWOT analysis to explore your agency's current funding structures. And then for sources, to find this information, you can interview a manager or a financial office, worker, if your agency has one or organization. You could read your agency's year-end report, read a completed grant submission, so the budget and financial section. If you work for a nonprofit, most, if not all of those things should be public on their website, or through the federal government. Um, Review your agency's website. A lot of nonprofits and government organizations are pretty transparent about uh, how much money they spend and where. Um, and you can also ask your supervisor. If you're still running into trouble, let me know. Knowing where the money comes from is kind of important. And it's part of your assignment. So I wanted to take a bit of time to imperfectly talk about unions and collective labor. They are two different things. Um, I wanted to kind of give you some background on what I encountered after I graduated that made me want to research unions and how to get them started, potentially, um, and just give you the resources to be able to not have to start from square zero like I did. I was watching this video earlier today, where uh, I don't know if any of you have watched any of the Legal Eagle videos, but he had a quote in this that I feel like very much summarized my experience, uh, that led me to want to look at potentially unionizing my workplace. And he said, eventually you will be asked to violate your oath or your conscience. And no matter how much you debase yourself to make it work, it'll never be enough. Um, I'm not here to tell you that unions are the perfect solution or great or even good. Um, I think a lot of us in the workplace, if you're working for somebody that isn't yourself, like if you're working for a company, we reach limitations of what we can do and the impact we can have in like just as us and in our day-to-day work. And if you get the sense that a lot of your coworkers are kind of feeling similarly, this might be something to consider. Um, so that's the kind of perspective I'm coming from. I'm not trying to push this on you. I'm not trying to, say one way or the other. I'm just trying to give you some information here so that in case you need it or somebody else needs it, you've got some starting points at least. So I know that this topic may be considered controversial. Um, you know, it's money, it's power, it's control. Um, any system that has people involved is going to be imperfect because there are people involved. And anytime you've got like power dynamics at play, there's always a chance for, folks to use that power uh irresponsibly. Um, it's that Spider-Man quote with great power comes great responsibility. Um, again, why am I telling you all this stuff, or why did I want to bring up unions? This wasn't actually in the original course content. It's something I brought up because I realized after I got out of school that I had never been taught anything about it. Um, and I found that to be odd because it seems like such a just a social work idea is to organize folks who are unhappy or have like perceived injustice in their workplace, to then be able to take action. So I want you to have these resources, or at the very least know how to find them in case you need them, because I wish I had gotten them a bit earlier in my career. So I know I've told y'all my personal work experience. I've worked at two hospices. So the first hospice I worked at, the first place I got a job after I graduated was with Bridges Community Care, which later became Envision Healthcare at Home, and that was in Denver. I also worked at Hope Health Hospice in Providence. I also kind of traveled all around Massachusetts and Rhode Island for that. Um, I worked at True Pace, which is a program for all-inclusive care for the elderly. It's kind of like a Medicare adjacent program that works with older folks. I think you have to be like age 55 and up, I want to say. Um, and then I did work at a dialysis center in Jamaica Plain. Um, so a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is just from that healthcare perspective. Um, I don't really feel the need to unionize where I work now. It's more so when I was working in healthcare. Um, I experienced immense moral injury from working in healthcare and hospice specifically. It does seem like as we are ending or nearing late stage capitalism, that or we're within it, uh, we're being asked to do more and more with less and less. And it's one thing to compromise on the back end, the administrative stuff, whatever. I get it, insurance companies suck. Like all of that is all true. But it was getting to the point where I felt like I was being asked to do the impossible and to focus on uh, unrealistic and frankly irresponsible productivity goals. Um, that was like in direct conflict with what I learned from the NASW Code of Ethics and my own moral code. Um, the big thing that really got to me over the time was how much the productivity goals were negatively impacting patient care and family care. Because in hospice, it seemed like this beautiful bubble, this pocket of healthcare where it hadn't been touched by capitalism yet. It hadn't been, um, we weren't being asked to make money for anybody because who wants to make money off of the dying, right? It was kind of taboo. Essentially, it got to the point where it was just negatively impacting services, and it made me feel like absolute shit as a human, as a social worker. Um, what I ended up doing was I called NASW because if you remember, they have a legal hotline. They can't give you straight up legal advice, but I was just at a point where I was like, I don't even know what to do. I feel like this is unethical. Um, and hospice has its own board that they need to be accredited with, and so they're supposed to go through what have you. And they basically said if you are being asked to do anything in conflict with the code of ethics, just remember that you've been hired as a licensed social worker. And so in that sense, you are required to follow the NASW code of ethics. So if they are asking you to do something that's without like outside of that purview or prevents you from doing your job, as is outlined in the code of ethics, then you have every right to push back. So that kind of helped me put it in perspective. I had never been part of a union. I knew that unions were a thing, but I didn't even know how to go about doing it or what that process was, or even if unions still really existed in any way. I knew they did for some industries, like nurses have unions. I knew that much. Like my brother and his wife are part of a union. They're teachers, they're high school English teachers. Um, I was already like well into burnout and exhaustion when I was searching about how to form a union and what that process would be like. I also want to be very real with you that there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation about unions. There can be corruption within unions. I think a lot of the criticisms are valid. Um, and there can be a very real fear or danger around them. Uh, because once you say the union word at work, you might become a target. Uh, so there is definitely an element of risk. I don't want to downplay that either. Um, Ultimately, the power is with the people, right? Um, this list might not be for you. This might be for a client or a community you end up working with. Um, Again, take these with a grain of salt. It's more so for you to have the links and have the resources if you need or want them. I've got labor notes, Ewok, which I did not link, but I will. Um, I would recommend you take a look at this just 6-minute video here that talks about how about 3 years ago, a union was the first union at Amazon was created. Even though there was a lot of, again, threats, misinformation, disinformation. Um, if you're interested in the history of unions, this next video is a really good place to start. This is a step-by-step video on how to start a union. Um, when I was first trying to figure out how to unionize or what that even looked like, I Googled hospice union organization. Um, and I was able to find, I think it was actually in Minnesota. I was able to track down, and there was a social worker who worked in this company that uh, was part of the unionization of the group. And I was able to find her on LinkedIn and I messaged her. I never heard back, but I tried, right? Um, I did end up initially connecting with somebody from Democratic Socialists of America, DSA. Um, Not necessarily affiliated with the party, but like uh, they support organized labor and those wanting to potentially organize a union. And so when I connected with this person, they gave me the PDF for Secrets of a Successful Organizer. I'm gonna drop that PDF in just in case y'all would like, to be able to um, read that and have that resource. So, with all that, your self reflection this week, um, just wanted you to reflect on a time you witnessed or experienced um, the power being used constructively or destructively in an organization. What dynamics were at play? What would a more just use of power have looked like? And I also want you to practice your SWOT analysis. So within the SWOT exercise, right? We'll have you do that first. And this is the reflection piece of it. So this is kind of your self-reflection after doing that exercise. Which strengths in the organization most surprised you? Um, in what ways do power and inclusion show up in your analysis? So reflect on the Power Cube framework. What are 3 questions you might add to your SWOT analysis if you were conducting it with a group at your organization, just to critically examine assumed paradigms and invite a decolonized perspective? If you could only take one thing from your SWOT analysis to support your agency mission, what would it be? Like, what's your biggest takeaway? Closing thoughts. Get some rest, y'all. It's still winter. We're all in this together. Um, yeah, I feel like the thing I say a lot to folks is the only way out is through. Uh, I think they also say too, what's the other one? If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Something like that. But either way, I just want to thank you for taking this evening with me, or morning or daytime, whenever you're watching this. Um, yeah, I look forward to seeing y'all again soon, potentially tomorrow or Tuesday the 10th. Alrighty.